You know, I've been meditating on this one. What does the Bible tell us? Because the Bible has instruction.
The bunch of filthy sodomite perverts, and if you don't like it, get out of here. They're at war with us tonight.
The term for relations between two men is called sodomy. What's next is what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. It's just a question of how soon the wrath of God is going to come on this land.
This church has always been mission-oriented and also outward-looking. I think this church has always had a mind for who isn't here. And so when the AIDS epidemic was at its height, and every other church in town was slamming its doors on the gay community, St. Mark felt like they should invite the community in.
So this church has been around since the late 1800s. And this particular church started having small groups, just support groups for folks who either had lost a partner or a loved one to AIDS, or folks who were dealing with HIV and AIDS in their own life. In addition, the Pride Parade always comes right in front of St. Mark each year, right down Peachtree Street. Somebody ran down to the copy machine real quick and Xeroxed, some signs that said everybody's welcome at St. Mark, and they passed that out in addition to the cups of water. And for folks that were in the march itself, you come down Peachtree Street and you see these little old ladies passing out welcome signs and cups of water, and that that ran parallel to the outreach around HIV and AIDS, and that really led to a rebirth of St. Mark as we know it today, which is a place that is probably 75-80% gay, lesbian, transgender families that are part of this congregation, and that's kind of the transition that happened, and that's kind of where we are today.
I've been coming to St. Mark for, I think it's 4 years now, 3 or 4 years, yeah.
I've been at St. Mark for at least 14 years.
I started going to St. Mark in January, so it's been about 6 months. I started coming into Atlanta.
I was looking for a church that was going to be inclusive because I myself am demisexual, so I'm like on the asexuality spectrum, and I wanted a place that felt welcoming for everybody. So I was looking actually on Yelp reviews for churches, and this is one where they straight off the bat were like, this is a very open, honest, friendly place to be. And I came and I was like, it was exactly what they said, and I felt welcome here, and I felt like I could be myself here, which is important. We see a wide variety of people, so that's why I just continue to come.
There's churches in the neighborhoods, and all my friends were here, and everybody else from the church. It's a very open church.
I've heard really good things about St. Mark before coming here, and it's just such a welcoming environment, and they welcome people of all colors, genders, sexualities, everything, and everyone's just welcome here, and they make you feel so loved, and so I really want to be a part of an environment like that, because especially in today's world, there's a lot of hate, and especially in the church community, which is crazy, but here there's nothing but love, and that's what we do here. Picks me up on my bad days, and it's just kind of feels like a family here. Thank you so much.
One of the strange things about the United Methodist Church is that we make our theological statements on the basis of a majority vote at our convention every 4 years. We have a book that we add to and subtract from, edit every 4 years, called the Book of Discipline. In 1972, they felt like a statement about homosexuality should be added to our Book of Discipline. And they decided to add what they thought at the time was a rather moderate kind of statement. It starts out by saying, we recognize homosexual persons as people of sacred worth, that God affirms them as people of sacred worth, but that the practice of homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching. That's what they added. In future books of discipline, they also added a prohibition on marriage of gay people, indicating that marriage is just between one man and one woman. We added a prohibition on ministers performing weddings for gay couples on Methodist church property or anywhere else. We added a statement about not giving money to organizations that promote homosexuality. See, that shows a level of ignorance about gender orientation. All of those things demonstrate how little we knew about the gay community when those things were being added to the book of discipline.
This young lawyer asked Jesus one time what the greatest commandment was. And Jesus' response was, the first and greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. And the second greatest commandment is just like the first, and that is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. So in that is love God, love yourself, and love your neighbor. Sort of those three things, and that they're all interrelated. So to me, that is the litmus test for everything. And so when we talk about Black Lives Matter, when we talk about people being able to marry and love who they choose to marry and love, when we talk about any of these other issues, to me, are we loving our neighbors? Are we loving ourselves? And are we loving God?
Can you just share quickly any opinions you have on that coexistence between the church, Christianity, and gender identity and sexuality?
I'm kind of fortunate because my father is a Presbyterian minister, and so we've talked a lot about this because there are specific references in Scripture to homosexuality, but when I've talked to him and he's explained to me that took place during biblical times when there were young boys used in households as in a homosexual way, but it wasn't consensual. And there was definitely a victim because they were little children that were forced. They were like slaves in the household. So when the Bible is talking about that sort of homosexuality, my father feels like that's what it's condemning. There were victims involved. There were little children that were helpless, and he doesn't feel like the scriptures relate to modern day homosexuality, which is consensual.
As a Bible scholar, the problem with our current stance is it is inconsistent with the way that we interpret the Bible on other subjects. The Bible literally has hundreds of verses that support the subordination of women. It has thousands of verses that support the institution of slavery. There are 6 verses in the Bible that have anything to do with gender orientation. And I would make the argument that at the time in which the scripture was produced, they did not understand human sexuality the way we understand it today. They are not talking about the same thing we are currently talking about.
I feel that it's possible. I am, even though I'm a Baptist, and as far as when it comes to homosexuality, we've all at some point have a relative or someone that has, is a part of that. And of course, I would not dare not say that I would not accept them because of my love for that person and they're still individuals. And I just feel as though that when that time comes, it is up to the man or girl to determine whether or not, that what they are doing is wrong. But I feel as though that there should be love for everyone, regardless of the spite of or their identity or their sexuality or who they are.
One of the reasons they could add this, the practice of homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching language, and say that at the same time they said homosexual persons are persons of sacred worth. The reason they could say those at the same time is they were still in the old love the sinner, hate the sin era, where they thought you could divorce someone's, they thought of homosexuality as a series of sexual activities one would choose to engage in or not. They didn't understand gender orientation in 1972. Not the way we understand it now.
I think it depends on who you are, definitely. There are a lot of different opinions on that. And I know that some people will swear by the Bible and say it is in the Bible that, men are to marry women and that's just it and that's the end. But then it also says to love others and stuff like that. So I feel like there's a really gray area where no one actually really knows what's going on. But I think you can coexist in a church because like, at the end of the day, it's all the same love, like, no matter what gender you are. And I think that, like, in my opinion, like, people should be more accepting of gender identity.
In my opinion, they should be completely separate. The church should not preach morality or politics. It's very spiritual. People believe in God should have to do how they give various notes on it.
Romans chapter 1, it says that, it talks about, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness. And it goes on to say, it talks about covetousness, law breakers, covenant breakers, and men with men, lying together, and women with women, doing that which is unseemly because it's against nature, because we were created to, of course, produce babies and, man and women. But anyways, I don't condemn anyone. I condemn sin, I don't condemn people personally.
Getting into a scripture pissing contest with folks never changes hearts and minds. Stories, that personal narrative, that sharing of values, that seems to be what shifts people. But if we're coming at it from a scripture perspective, anybody who has actually studied the Bible knows that in Leviticus, for example, where it's got the list of different things that are an abomination, and it lists, homosexuality, that's one of those things that's listed in the same paragraph as eating pork or shrimp or touching a female who's menstruating. I mean, like, those things I wouldn't even take that seriously if somebody were to bring that up today. And so you can't just pick and choose what's an abomination and what's not if we're going to look at Leviticus. And the conversation has evolved since then. And so if somebody's coming saying homosexuality is an abomination, well, how does that fit with loving God, loving self, and loving neighbor?
The person who preaches on Sunday controls the atmosphere in the church with regard to how people feel when they come to church. If you come to a church where somebody from the pulpit is going to threaten you every Sunday, or is going to make you feel bad about yourself every Sunday, that produces a toxic environment for everybody. It has always produced a toxic environment for gay people. And especially nowadays when homosexuality seems to be everybody's favorite go-to sin. That's all. You can immediately get the whole crowd on your side if you throw in a few gay-bashing passages in every sermon. And I'm just not willing to do that. I don't believe in it. And I don't believe in creating an environment in church where people leave feeling guilty or that there's something wrong with them or that God does not love them. I mean, that's not the way I preach.
Because of who our demographic is, primarily gay, lesbian, transgender folks, oftentimes they have felt rejected by other churches or felt the sting of exclusion. And they don't feel that here. And so most of the folks that walk through those doors are here because they want to be here. Not out of a sense of obligation, not because they've just been doing this all this time, that's just what we do. They're here because they want to be here. And that changes the energy in the room. And I think that's really important to think about. It's like the difference between people wanting to be here and having to be here. We are painfully aware that we often get it wrong. We get it wrong a lot, especially on issues of poverty and homelessness, even though we're trying to do something about it. Like, we get that wrong a lot. Racial stuff, we have a long way to go in how we talk about and engage with race issues. We're working on it, but I think there's a recognition that we are sort of in a process towards perfection, that we have not arrived there yet. And I think that's important for congregations to be aware of and have a sense of humility around those things. Again, trying to frame things in terms of, our own experience with exclusion and oppression around LGBT stuff, maybe HIV stuff, is our entry point into a much larger conversation about social justice and oppression and exclusion and how we can partner with all kinds of other folks to create a new world where folks are welcome, included, and loved, and have enough, and all those things.